Thunder all through the night. Promise to see
Yahshua
in the morning light. Take my hand, it'll be alright. Come on, save your soul tonight. Thunder all through the night. Promise to see
Yahshua
in the morning light. Take my hand, it'll be alright. Come on, save your soul tonight.
September 2013, documentary filmmaker Bart Sibrel wrote, I was first told about Planet X by a high-ranking source at NASA in or about 1989. Now let me read you a quote from what Bart says. They said, this is the NASA source, its dramatic gravitational effects would cause apocalyptic disasters upon the entire Earth. The planet is pitch black and near the temperature of absolute zero, requiring very specialized infrared satellites to be observed, which only the US government owns, or, you know who else owns it? The Vatican. And they call it the Lucifer Infrared Telescope. Well, why did the Pope call the world's best and privately owned infrared telescope Lucifer? Because it was specifically designed to track Planet X, whose nickname is Lucifer. What does Lucifer mean? It means the day star. Well, what's a day star? It's a star that you can see in the day. So they're looking for something that won't be trackable through normal telescopes, but when it gets close enough, it's going to be able to be seen during the day. It's also called the Great Dragon, right, or the Destroyer.
Could it be the shock that the public, that the church needs?
It could be, and that is one reason why it's not published, and why it's sunk into a limbo, out of which it's not going to come easily. It would be a shock, there's no doubt about that. It would affect people in different ways, though, Art. Again, Art, stepping very carefully.
Yes, sir.
The central element in the third secret is awful. In human calculation, yes, this will shock, this will jerk people out, this will fill the confessionals on a Saturday evening, this will fill up the cathedrals and the basilicas and the churches with worshippers kneeling down, striking their breasts. Now, what's the secret? It's rather a dire document, ma'am. It's not pleasant reading at all. I'm under oath not to reveal the actual details of it, but it is not pleasant reading at all.
Does this involve a chastisement?
Yes, several.
With what, how much weight, Father, do you give to the entire Fatima revelations?
I consider it to be the key event in the declining fortune of the Roman Catholic organization and the defining event for the near future of the Church in the next millennium, the third millennium. It's the defining event.
And you obviously cannot speak of that.
Not factually, not word for word. I can't. I took a note. But it ain't pleasant. The less you know about it, the better. Except that there is going to be a reckoning, and that nobody existing on the face of this earth will be exempt from knowing the power from on high. They will interpret it in different ways.
That stands to reason.
According
to their beliefs.
That's right, and their culture and their bias. And there will be people who are faced with the certainty that there is a greater power above our heads will say...
They will deny it. They will...
They'll reject it.
The scientists, for example, will find a scientific explanation for it.
They will.
But whether they admit it or not, a great deal of political power all around the world. One of the things that they did fairly recently was they muscled, and I do intend to use that word, they muscled their way onto a mountain in Arizona, Mount Graham, and they built an observatory on Mount Graham in connection with an Arizona university.
Yes.
However, the Vatican has the larger part of the control of this observatory,
Yes.
looking at deep space things.
That's right.
Now, why would they have done that, Father?
Because the mentality amongst those who at the higher levels, the highest levels of Vatican administration and Vatican geopolitics, know that now knowledge of what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Carefully and well-chosen words, Father. Thank you.
Can you tell us in a way that we can read between the lines with regard to the third prophecy? Is there a timetable that you are aware of that cannot speak of that we can read between the lines on?
We can't avert it now. It is coming. When is something else? But it is coming for sure. It is not 200 years away. It is not 50 years away. It is not 20 years away. Number one.
Well, that's...
And number two, it involves the entire world system. It's not merely one area, not merely one religion, not merely one race.
will be apparent to all.
All, without exception. Without exception, and it will be frightening.
No way.
He's not afraid to tell the truth.
Thank you, Bill. What is your question?
I wanted to know, where is all this going to start?
Seriously? They got the earth cracking under their ashes already.
Our family believes in the gospel of the Lord Jesus. We have nothing to fear, Charlie.
Good for you, Bill. Thanks for calling. This is Charlie Frost reporting live from Yellowstone National Park, soon to become the world's largest active volcano. I'll be right back, folks.
Hey, do you mind if I join you? I wanted to ask you something.
I only got a minute.
Hey, I was listening to the broadcast, and I was wondering, what exactly is it that's going to start in Hollywood?
It's the apocalypse, end of days, the judgment day, the end of the world, my friend. Christians called it the rapture, but the Mayans knew about it, the Hopis, the I Ching, the Bible. You'd have to keep a thing like this under wraps. I mean, just think about it, okay? First, the stock market would go. Then the economy, boom! The dollar, boom! And then pandemonium in the streets. War, genocide, boom, boom, boom!
Bullshit. Nobody could keep that big a secret, Charlie. Somebody blow the whistle.
And every once in a while, some poor little sucker tries. Well, like these guys. Boom! Boom! Every one of these guys, dead, dead, dead!
just as Planet X is heading inbound on a collision course with Earth.
Now, Dr. Velikovsky wrote a number of books. Now, what I'm going to quote here word for word is a quotation from one of those books. It's titled Earth in Upheaval by Immanuel Velikovsky. Now, what he's doing here is giving this is one page of one book. One page of one book. He's giving a very compact, highly condensed observation of what happens in a pole shift. Observations based on what he found going around the planet and finding the evidence. It's titled A Working Hypothesis. Let us assume as a working hypothesis that under the impact of a force or the influence of an agent, and the Earth does not travel in an empty universe, the axis of the Earth shifted or tilted. At that moment, an earthquake would make the globe shudder. Air and water would continue to move through inertia. Hurricanes would sweep the earth and seas would rush over continents, carrying gravel and sand and marine animals, casting them on the land. Heat would be developed. Rocks would melt, volcanoes would erupt, lava would flow from fissures in the ruptured ground and covered vast areas. Mountains would spring up from the plains and would travel and climb on the shoulders of other mountains, causing faults and rifts. Lakes would be tilted and emptied. Rivers would change their beds. Large land areas with all their inhabitants would slip under the sea. Forests would burn. Hurricanes and wild seas would wrest them from the ground on which they grew and pile them, branch and root, in huge heaps. The seas would turn into deserts, their waters rolling away. And if a change in the velocity of the Earth's rotation, slowing it down, should accompany the shifting of the axis, the water confined to the equatorial oceans by centrifugal force would retreat to the poles, and high tides and hurricanes would rush from pole to pole, carrying reindeer and seals to the tropics and desert lines into the Arctic, moving from the equator up and down the mountain ridges of the Himalayas and down the African jungles, and crumbled rocks torn from splintering mountains would be scattered over large distances. And herds of animals would be washed from the plains of Siberia. The shifting of the axis would also change the climate of every place, leaving corals in Newfoundland and elephants in Alaska, fig trees in northern Greenland, and luxuriant forests in Antarctica. In the event of a rapid shift of the axis, many species and genera of animals on land and in the sea would be destroyed, and civilizations, if any, would be reduced to ruins.
Okay, so the scariest environment imaginable. Thanks. That's all you gotta say. Scariest environment imaginable.
Scream in terror, for the day of the Lord has arrived. The time for the Almighty to destroy. Every arm is paralyzed with fear. Every heart melts, and people are terrified. Pangs of anguish grip them like those of a woman in labor. They look helplessly at one another, their faces aflame with fear. For see, the day of the Lord is coming, the terrible day of his fury and fierce anger. The land will be made desolate, and all the sinners destroyed with it.
I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder,
Come and see!
Then everyone, the kings of the earth, the rulers, the generals, the wealthy, the powerful, and every slave and free person, all hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they cried to the mountains and rocks,
Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come. Who can withstand it? That's a woman. Goddamn America! Goddamn America! Goddamn America!
I saw the end of the world. I could feel all this death.
Does our sun have an evil twin? A star named Nemesis orbiting the distant reaches of our solar system? And every 26 million years, does it fling comets from the Oort cloud toward Earth?
Sometimes they get tossed out, other times they orbit harmlessly until they evaporate and go away.
Scientist Richard Muller not only theorizes that this periodic mayhem is caused by a deadly companion star to the sun, he believes he knows precisely what kind of star it is: a red dwarf. An evil twin to the sun named Nemesis. Some scientists suspect that Nemesis is a dark, still undiscovered star orbiting our sun. And every 26 million years, it triggers a disaster.
We know that the solar system is surrounded by this enormous cloud of comets, and so these successive passages of the sun's companion would send comets into the inner solar system. Some of them would hit Earth.
What follows is death on a colossal scale. It is now widely accepted that a rock from space caused the end of the age of dinosaurs 65 million years ago.
So we now are pretty convinced that the reason that a huge fraction of life on the Earth went extinct 65 million years ago was because a comet slammed into the Earth.
The resulting impacts have been the source of many major extinction events in Earth's history. By definition, a red dwarf barely glows at all.
It would be the closest star to our sun, and we wouldn't even know it. Now, why is that? The way we discover nearby stars is either because they're very bright, and a red dwarf star is not very bright, or because the sun is moving past it. This star is moving with us. Yes, it's orbiting us, but that orbit is very slow, 26 million years. So it would be moving with us. It would just be at a fixed position in the sky and wouldn't move.
In other words, when viewed from Earth, most nearby objects are shifting over time. But Nemesis is sitting still.
If the sun was all by itself and there was no Nemesis, then the comets in the Oort cloud would all have very predictable and regular orbits. They would be very regular in their arrival times and departure times.
Without gravitational interference from anything other than the sun, Oort cloud comets, like juggled objects, could spread out evenly across the sky. However, that's not what some scientists report.
When we look out into the sky and look at where the comets are coming from, their directions tend to concentrate in a certain region of the sky. And one possible explanation for that is that that skew is being directed by the gravitational perturbations from an unseen object that is out there.
Based on these observations, scientists infer that a huge object is disturbing the Oort cloud.
The solar system probably formed in a cluster of stars, and so close encounters with nearby stars, nearby rogue planets even, were much more common during the very earliest days of the solar system's formation.
Most of these solar brothers and sisters have long since dispersed. But according to the Nemesis hypothesis, one of them is still out there, still circling the sun, still causing periodic chaos amongst the comets. and still waiting to rain death on the Earth once more. If that is correct, future generations will be faced with a monumental threat when Nemesis returns.
The cloud contains perhaps 10 trillion comets, maybe even more. But remember, it's really big, so if you were in the Oort cloud, it's not like you would be pelted by comets all the time. The spaces between them would be pretty big.
Like a bowling ball in a juggler's hands, Nemesis simply shuffles some comets out of its way.
The Oort cloud has an empty region in the middle. It's been cleaned out by Jupiter and by the Sun. We live in that region.
But as Nemesis approaches, the inner solar system becomes a shooting gallery.
And so there start to be a few more comets than usual, and then suddenly there are just comets coming all the time.
And at the peak, there might be 1,000 to 10,000 comets per year in the sky.
Will the impact spark another catastrophic extinction on Earth? Perhaps.
It would be difficult to predict exactly when the impact would happen, but there would be this phase, this sort of danger zone in which the chances for a catastrophic impact with something of a comet size would be much, much higher than they are now.
When binary stars are of different sizes, the smaller star, in this case Nemesis, swings in a wide orbit around its larger companion, in this case the Sun, which barely seems to orbit at all. Why does the smaller one move in a much wider circle? The answer has to do with a concept called the center of mass.
Wow, are you guys balanced?
But unlike these gymnasts, Nemesis and the Sun are not equal. Astronomer Richard Muller estimates that the Sun has 10 times more mass than its undiscovered twin. And when one binary star is larger than its sibling, the center of mass between them shifts closer to the larger star. Since Tammy weighs about 4 times as much as the metal weights, she must move far closer to the center of mass to maintain balance. If Tammy and the weights represented binary stars, the weights would orbit far out in the distance, while Tammy would barely move. In fact, both would be orbiting each other.
It's kind of a misconception to think that the more massive star doesn't move and the less massive star just goes around it. In fact, they're still both orbiting the common center of mass.
Although calculations indicate that Nemesis isn't due back for millions of years, something appears to be shaking up the comets in the Oort cloud right now. Could Nemesis already be upon us? A dark reddish star has entered the Oort cloud. Nemesis has returned. If humans still exist on Earth, they'll face a slow building but imminent cosmic threat.
That begs the question, what can you see today? What you can see are a lot of rocks coming our way.
Well, here it is, folks. We're getting rained on. Fireballs all over the world. It's a global event. We've seen these streams before. The numbers seem to be increasing. The reason I say that is because when I search for these fireballs reports and I use, let's say, American Meteor Society, I only search for the ones that break the sound barrier. Those are your largest ones. Those are your most threatening ones. It limits your search down, gives you a very clear picture, kind of rules out comet dust. You know, comet dust doesn't go boom and break your window. At least not yet. So the bottom line is we're going through a debris field, and I and my colleagues have tracked this debris field. We've used pretty much American Meteor Society, and we've shown you the patterns, and we're showing you how the patterns are shifting. For example, May and June used to be light fireball months. Okay, not anymore. May and June have become very active fireball months. And it looks like, here's the reason why, it looks like it's a debris field. Now here's what I wanted to talk to you about. These things, there are going to be more of them, and every once in a while, our atmosphere doesn't do the job, and one gets through, hits the ground. So far, the impacts have been small. Some of them have been in the ocean. People have actually, their houses have been hit in the last 5 years, even in the United States.
The American Meteor Society was founded in 1911 for meteor observations. It is a reliable source for information about meteors and fireballs. If you need to see things for yourself, visit www.amsmeteors.org and support the effort. But why would you want to do that? Because on February 15, 2013, NASA had all of us focused on the flyby of asteroid 2012 DA14. After weeks of media hype, the flyby turned out to be a rather boring non-event. Yet, on the very same day, the Chelyabinsk meteor airbursted over the southern Urals. It was the largest rock to hit our planet in over a century, and its detonation released the equivalent energy of over 20 Hiroshima bombs. It damaged over 7,000 buildings, and 500 people had to seek medical treatment for wounds. When pressed by the media for an explanation as to why NASA never saw it coming, they finally had to admit that they were blindsided by this meteor because it came out of the sun and that they do not have any telescopes pointed in that direction. Still the same, can you imagine the carnage that would have occurred had this meteor airbursted over a major American city with the equivalent energy of over 20 Hiroshima atomic bombs? The point here is that we can continue to argue about what is happening here on Earth in a way that keeps the consensus out of reach. But when it comes to meteors, there are no more frivolous debunker theories about natural variation, increased reporting, and, well, swamp gas. Just consequences. That is why visiting the American Meteor Society, the AMS, is something you can do today to see what's coming at us. To show you why, we're going to show what people are seeing and reporting from 2010 through October 2013 based on AMS observation reporting data. Next, you will see our statistical analysis for the following fireball observation trends: the average number of reports per event, number of reports by classification, multi-state event observations, fragmentation observations, events with sound reports, and finally a comparative trend summary that ties it all together. So let's begin. This series of slides shows the overall growth in the average number of reports per event for all classifications from January 1, 2010 to October 13, 2013. Of note is that in 2013, we see for the very first time in the history of AMS 2 fireball observations with over 1,000 reports each. So let's take a closer look at those reporting classifications. The AMS classifies meteor observations based on the number of reports per incident, where a mid-sized class event has 6 to 20 reports, a significant event has 21 to 50 reports, a large event has 51 to 100 reports, and a huge event has over 100 reports. So let's begin with a look at the mid-sized events. Here we see a pronounced jump from 2010 to 2011. Part of that jump can be attributed to the implementation of new reporting procedures by the AMS. Now let's add the number of significant reports with 21 to 50 observations each. Here we see a clear growth trend. Interestingly enough, there were no significant large events in 2010, but there were significant large events in 2011 and 2012, as well as a marked increase in 2013. In terms of huge events with over 100 reports, 2010 was barely noticeable. However, that picks up in 2011 and doubles in 2012, and then again in 2013. Given that we had 2 events with more than 1,000 observations in 2013, let's take a closer look at the uptick in huge events. Here we see the jump from 2011 to 2012 and then again to 2013 is stunning to say the least. Not only is the trend huge, so are the fireballs, or bolides as they are also called. So what's driving this trend? Multi-state observations. A multi-state event is where observations of the same fireball are reported in 2 or more states, and here we see a steady growth trend from 2010 to 2013. However, this underplays an even more profound change. Here we see a 15% increase from 2010 to 2013 in the number of reporting states by event. This clearly shows that these fireballs, or bolides if you will, are getting bigger. And another measure of this is fragmentation. Fragmentation is a key indicator of size, and while angle of attack and velocity also play a factor, the rule of thumb is the larger the meteor, the more likely it is to fragment, or break apart if you will. From 2011 through 2013, the number of meteors large enough to fragment skyrocketed according to AMS reporting data. This should be of real concern to all of us because this represents a 400% increase in just 3 years, and because there is a corresponding increase in sound as well. The AMS tracks 2 kinds of sounds: concurrent sounds heard during the flyby, and delayed sounds heard just afterwards. These charts are a combination of both, and the trend is clear. Sound follows with fragmentation. And what is really striking is that sound and fragmentation reports for 2010 through 2013 show nearly identical increases. So now let's summarize what we've seen so far by looking at the growth trend percentages from 2010 to 2013. Now let's look at a big picture view of the AMS data based on the average number of observation reports per event, events with sound reports, fragmentation observations, and multi-state event observations. And what we see here, beginning with 2010, is a consistent growth trend by percentage from 2010 through to 2013. It is important to note that all of the data presented in this video is for the 2013 reporting period of January 1, 2013 to October 13, 2013, with 2.5 months yet to be reported. And for those of you who are still laboring with doubts about all of this, there is only one question you need to answer. What's throwing all these rocks at us?
Are we in tribulation? I think not. But the second question is relevant. Are we near the tribulation? Are we near the time? Is it possible we're already in the opening of the 7 seals? I think there is that possibility. If you don't know this, since September 2013 are the Feasts of Trumpets, which we honored and celebrated in this church. Since the Feast of Trumpets, 2013, astronomers have noticed an uptick in meteor activity. And for meteors to be coming into the Earth and landing on the Earth, I mean, basically it's got to fly through all of that space and like pinpoint to the Earth. And multiple pinpoint impacts are happening night after night, night after night. And it started in September. Did you know this? 30th of September 2013, a fireball cut power out in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. And here are Mexican ladies holding on to meteorites that cut their electricity out. Look at the fragments of meteorites that they collected. Did you know on the 20th of November 2013, this fireball was photographed, recorded, YouTube, you can find it yourself, over Portland, Oregon. And from North Carolina all the way to Hawaii, America right now is seeing meteor showers almost every night. Something is happening. Just Hollywood imagining this. The Bible said this 2,000 years ago. Hopefully you believe in Jesus Christ long before then and realize it's never been easier to believe the Bible. It is so relevant. It is so logical, so accurate. Thank God for the Bible. My last question for today, if you'll indulge me, I think if you look at all this, a question would arise in your mind, why? Why does God even allow these things to happen? What's up with meteors coming from outer space? Why is that important in God's plan? It is likely that the fallen angels were punished by stoning. Do we have any evidence of this? Yes, we have what's called an asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, and it's probably the remnant of a destroyed planet. How far, how wide was the domain of Satan and his angels? I don't know. But I don't think they were restricted like we are to planet Earth. I think they had free reign. And when God was upset with them, He blew up their planet. I think that's why when they saw Jesus, they were scared out of their wits. We have this image of this wonderful, gentle, Jesus. But when they saw Jesus get mad, He didn't just stone them on the head. He blew up the entire thing. There is a remnant of this planet called the asteroid belt. And Jupiter also has 2 debris fields that share its orbit. And they're probably the remnants of 2 destroyed moons. They're called the Greeks and the Trojans. The asteroid belt, by the way, if you're into geometry, symmetry, isn't that interesting? It makes an equilateral triangle. It's called the Hilda triangle, and it moves in resonance with Jupiter. I think it's a reminder. There's no doubt that our solar system has had a violent past. The question is, what could have caused it? Comets and Planet X may be a scientific explanation. These objects can fling rocks from the debris fields to the Earth. But remember what I said in my sermon about miracles? Just because you can scientifically explain it doesn't mean that it's not a miracle. God will always move in line with His own creation, with laws that He's made. Why meteors? I believe Satan and his fallen angels were probably punished by stoning. The evidence of our solar system shows the planets were punished by stoning on a large scale. Knowing God is fair and just, Satan probably demanded that humans be punished for their sins by stoning. We're not the only players in the drama of the universe. The Bible actually indicates that we are a spectacle unto the angels. There's a conversation going on in heaven about us and what's going on this planet, and we are to prove the goodness and the justice of the earth. God is just. Under the Old Covenant, the sinner was supposed to be punished by stoning. Before the age that is to come, the sinner will be punished by stoning one last time. And one purpose of the book of Revelation is to prove the justice of God. He is a just God. God will avenge the blood of all the martyrs, all his believers who died by stoning and burning, with the very same method that our persecutors used against us.
It is estimated that this piece of an asteroid weighed at least 150 pounds and was over 16 inches in diameter. It moved almost due south at a speed of 29,000 miles per hour.
Probably don't recall anything major happening on February 6th of this year. But according to a new report from NASA, an exceptionally bright meteor zoomed into Earth's atmosphere and likely exploded over the South Atlantic Ocean.
Just recently, it was reported that massive black areas are appearing on the sun. But NASA once again tells the public not to worry.
The planets in our entire solar system have started heating up, temperature increases, and their orbits are wiggling. They are being affected from Pluto out. In other words, from Pluto coming inwards, but they're heating up from Pluto coming inwards. They are not being heated up by the sun. And this is a scientific fact that's been going on. All of the surface atmosphere, the chemical structure, and the heat, the temperature of all of our planets started a year or so ago going up and started being affected by some body out there beyond Pluto. And that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about Nibiru, and we're talking about something that swings through here every 3,600 years. And when it comes close to the Earth, it's going to clean it off like Noah's flood, because that was one of the passes of Nibiru. That was Noah's floods.
Are we in tribulation? I think not. But the second question is relevant. Are we near the tribulation? Are we near the time? Is it possible we're already in the opening of the 7 seals? I think there is that possibility. If you don't know this, since September 2013 are the Feasts of Trumpets, which we honored and celebrated in this church. Since the Feast of Trumpets, 2013, astronomers have noticed an uptick in meteor activity. And for meteors to be coming into the Earth and landing on the Earth, I mean, basically it's got to fly through all of that space and like pinpoint to the Earth. And multiple pinpoint impacts are happening night after night, night after night. And it started in September. Did you know this? 30th of September 2013, a fireball cut power out in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. And here are Mexican ladies holding on to meteorites that cut their electricity out. Look at the fragments of meteorites that they collected. Did you know on the 20th of November 2013, this fireball was photographed, recorded, YouTube, you can find it yourself, over Portland, Oregon. And from North Carolina all the way to Hawaii, America right now is seeing meteor showers almost every night. Something is happening. Just Hollywood imagining this. The Bible said this 2,000 years ago. Hopefully you believe in Jesus Christ long before then and realize it's never been easier to believe the Bible. It is so relevant. It is so logical, so accurate. Thank God for the Bible. My last question for today, if you'll indulge me, I think if you look at all this, a question would arise in your mind: why? Why does God even allow these things to happen? What's up with meteors coming from outer space? Why is that important in God's plan? It is likely that the fallen angels were punished by stoning. Do we have any evidence of this? Yes. We have what's called an asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, and it's probably the remnant of a destroyed planet. How far, how wide was the domain of Satan and his angels? I don't know. But I don't think they were restricted like we are to planet Earth. I think they had free reign. And when God was upset with them, He blew up their planet. I think that's why when they saw Jesus, they were scared out of their wits. We have this image of this wonderful, gentle, Jesus. But when they saw Jesus get mad, He didn't just stone them on the head. He blew up the entire thing. There is a remnant of this planet called the asteroid belt. And Jupiter also has 2 debris fields that share its orbit. And they're probably the remnants of 2 destroyed moons. They're called the Greeks and the Trojans. The asteroid belt, by the way, if you're into geometry, symmetry, isn't that interesting? It makes an equilateral triangle. It's called the Hilda triangle, and it moves in resonance with Jupiter. I think it's a reminder. There's no doubt that our solar system has had a violent past. The question is, what could have caused it? Comets and Planet X may be a scientific explanation. These objects can fling rocks from the debris fields to the Earth. But remember what I said in my sermon about miracles? Just because you can scientifically explain it doesn't mean that it's not a miracle. God will always move in line with His own creation, with laws that He's made. Why meteors? I believe Satan and his fallen angels were probably punished by stoning. The evidence of our solar system shows the planets were punished by stoning on a large scale. Knowing God is fair and just, Satan probably demanded that humans be punished for their sins by stoning. We're not the only players in the drama of the universe. The Bible actually indicates that we are a spectacle unto the angels. There's a conversation going on in heaven about us and what's going on this planet, and we are to prove the goodness and the justice of the earth. God is just. Under the Old Covenant, the sinner was supposed to be punished by stoning. Before the age that is to come, the sinner will be punished by stoning one last time. And one purpose of the book of Revelation is to prove the justice of God. He is a just God. God will avenge the blood of all the martyrs, all His believers who died by stoning and burning, with the very same method that our persecutors used against us. Hints of Planet X approaching? Well, we know that right now, this is what we know. The magnetic poles are moving at about 600 feet per day, unprecedented. Something is disturbing it. There are unpredictable comets and asteroids thrown out of their normal orbits. If you don't know, there were two bright meteors yesterday in America and Canada. And they never gave any warning. It just boom came. You know, if it actually landed, then it would be too late. There are increasing earthquakes caused by a tugging at Earth's crust. If you don't know that Yellowstone is one big gigantic volcano waiting to erupt, that's what it is. It's a national park in America, and for the first time there have been 3 swarms consecutively. The guy who's been studying this for 50 years says he's never seen anything like it. Just happened last week. Sinkholes, all right, are appearing everywhere. There's a release of underwater methane, which is a toxic gas that may be responsible for killing all the sea creatures that we keep seeing washed up, on the news. And then the government is buying up ammunition and giving police armored vehicle, it seems in preparation for martial law, the U.S. government. And there's U.S. $9 trillion missing in what are so-called black budgets.
And we got these large sinkholes. When I was young, you never even heard of these things. This is a modern term.
It's almost like sinkholes is commonplace now. It's just like it's in our pop culture, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Report out of Florida tonight is a reminder to millions of Americans there is a strange and dangerous vulnerability underground, sinkholes. A man was in his bedroom. The earth opened up beneath the house and he fell in.
At Inskip Point, a massive sinkhole swallowing at least 100 metres of beach. The popular four-wheel driving and camping strip gouged and washed out to sea.
I had a double on point 1971 through till the made it National Park, and we've never seen anything like this ever in our whole life. See different washouts that'll wash the sand out, but this isn't going out to sea, it's going down somewhere.
A few days ago, the earth opened up and left this giant sinkhole right in the middle of Dalton Haas's pasture.
My brother found it. He called me up and his voice was quaking. He said, "You'll never believe what I just seen."
Some 200 feet across, 90 feet deep. People are amazed at the size of this hole that seemed to show up overnight. Just to give you an idea of how big it is, this is me over here. A few people have hiked to the bottom.
I'd seen pictures and I thought it was deep, but I didn't know it was this deep. Get out here and you get a whole different perspective of how big it is.
You really can't get a good sense of the size and scope of this thing unless you walk up close to it. And just how safe it is to walk up close to it remains a question mark, because see these cracks in the ground right next to it? It appears the giant hole is going to get bigger, according to Sheriff Larry Townsend, who says there's no stopping it.
Here's video that explains why Florida authorities are so worried. What was a perfectly normal vacation villa with 24 units that are 3 floors high, all crumbling into a 100-foot sinkhole.
Nature, the first people, and the spirit of our ancestors are giving you loud warnings. Today, you see increasing floods, more damaging hurricanes, hailstorms, climate changes and earthquakes, as our prophecies said would come. Even animals and birds are warning us, with strange changes in their behavior, such as the beaching of whales. Why do animals act like they know about the Earth's problems, and most humans act like they know nothing? If we humans do not wake up to the warnings, the great purification will come to destroy this world, just as the previous worlds were destroyed.
If we just go back into 1973 and 74, earthquakes they had for a whole year was, in 73 they had 4,539. In 74 they had 4,528, only a difference of roughly 10 or so, okay? Today, we have over 36,000 earthquakes in a year. That's an 800% increase, 800%, and it's still climbing. Now, as the Bible says, you will see earthquakes like the pains of a woman giving birth. It will escalate. Well, that's a very interesting comment, because that matches if we had an approaching body coming into our universe. This is exactly what we would expect, an escalation of earthquakes, volcano, animal deaths, weather changes, you name it. All of these things are exactly what we would expect. According to Kepler's laws of planetary motion, according to the model, when it reached the edge of our solar system of Neptune, it takes roughly 16 years to reach the sun, to reach us over here. And then in 1992, according to where the Pioneer and Voyager probes were, when we reversed the model, it said it was roughly 8 years outside of our solar system. So in year 2000, it would have reached the edge of us and took 16 years to reach us over here, which is roughly 2016, possibly 2017, as a possible arrival date before we would cross a debris field. And this is what the estimates are showing us. We take a look at these earthquakes. The Bible says the earthquakes would be like the pains of a woman. This was from the USGS. They stopped showing this publicly. They stopped it in 2007.
Oh my God.
But if you went back and looked at it, this is where it is roughly today. Keep in mind, they're not reporting every earthquake anymore, neither. I had some friends of mine that were in Bulgaria, and they had a 3 or 4 there. The secretary of the group, she was almost thrown off the balcony. Her mom caught her belt and pulled her back. Otherwise, she was going to fall about 3 to 4 stories down to the street. And that wasn't even misreported on the USGS. And so not all of them are misreported right now. And look how high it is compared to where we used to be.
The graph
You're looking
is
at about it.
incredible. That it just speaks so much, Gil. That is incredible.
We're looking at an 800% increase. Well, look at these numbers. Now it's over 100,000 a year. 130,000, 140,000 a year we have. And it used to be only 4,500 in 1973.
Wow.
Volcanic activity, I'd say it's kind of high from this chart.
Yeah.
Let me give you another scenario for El Nino and La Nino. Remember, they kind of look at this because of the temperature of the oceans, the way it changes the currents. What about 3 million recently discovered underwater volcanoes?
Mm-hmm.
If our volcanoes are this active above ground, what do you think of the volcanoes that are under the ocean? Are they seeing the same level of activity? I would say so. And if the Pacific Rim, where all of this activity is going on, wouldn't that warm up our oceans and cause El Nino? I would say so. Tornadoes are getting to where they're off the charts.
Wow, the climate stuff is incredible.
The droughts. You're going to see a major food shortage start soon when Hoover Dam goes dry. It's about to happen. This is the drought supposedly pertaining to the world. We have extreme weather pattern. You got some places that are having extreme rain and flooding, and other places that's not getting it at all. Look at the record breakers we've had in 1 month. Temperature highs and lows that were broken. How about bird and fish kills?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, notice that this is where a lot of populated areas are. And a community, that means you can triple this probably to get a more accurate reading. Okay? Because this is only where there's internet and picture taking and modern civilizations. Bird and sea life is very sensitive to methane. So when the earth is shaking, it's releasing the methane.
And
And
methane
this is
release, that's also going to heat us up a little bit.
Yep. So as the more the earth shakes, the more methane's released. and the more death is occurring between the bird and the. You've heard of canary in a coal mine, right?
Oh yeah, that's how they know if the miners are gonna get it.
Exactly, just because it just takes a small parts per million, and methane is odorless, and that bird's dead. Same thing with these fish. And the caribou. Look at the llamas at the bottom left here. 171,000.
Oh my God.
Alpaca were dead in Peru. 171,000. 200 dead reindeer here. 127,000 antelopes in Kazakhstan. 150 dolphins at the bottom here.
Wow.
Major deaths going on. Here's our magnetic north. It's moving 12 times its normal speed. Here's a chart that shows how quickly it's moving. Remember, certain airports are changing their numbers on their landing strip because their north reading is changing. At least in the U.S. it has.
Yeah, they're actually changing the runways. They have to. They have no choice. It's changed that much that they actually have to change the runways for the pilots.
Yep. I plotted. There's information that you can get that plots where the magnetic north has been throughout the centuries. And what I did was a plot where I have data that showed that this object passed through the system here. Then I did an average circle between all three of them. Then I took where we are today. Well, in 2015, we entered into this average circle. 2016, we're getting even deeper in there. But we're in the average of circle on where it passed in the past. In past history, this is, this we could use this as an indicator. It's close. America has, if you want to call it, a stack of dominoes ready to fall. We have the Las Palmas Island, that half of the island, if it's shaken too badly, half of it will split off and form 9 tidal waves that will come across the East Coast. The first tidal wave, according to computer models, is 90 foot tall, followed by progressively small ones, smaller ones after that. But you're looking at 9 tidal waves hitting the East Coast. There's 21 nuclear facilities along the East Coast that may lose cooling power, just like Japan. We have Yellowstone, but not just Yellowstone. Yellowstone is a super volcano. America has 3 of them, 3 super volcanoes, as well as 13 other medium size all along the West Coast. And there's quite a few of them are showing signs of waking up, especially Yellowstone.
Yellowstone in northwest Wyoming, land of geysers, mountains, and lakes, is also sitting atop a super volcano. And it just took what scientists describe as a deep breath, causing miles of ground to rise dramatically. So,
unstable. They said unstable?
Yeah, unstable.
That's funny.
Have a good one.
Unstable.
A whole lot of shaking going on in Oklahoma. The Sooner State saw 850 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or greater this year. The trend is clear. Earthquakes are on the rise in Oklahoma.
just after 3 o'clock this morning. The house on a quiet residential street suddenly catching fire, then exploding into pieces, and about 50 other homes damaged.
What you'll be hearing in this presentation is a very compact version of what's taking me literally 27, 28 years to learn. This topic, as far as the U.S. government is concerned, is one of the most highly classified matters that the government deals with. Highly classified and highly compartmentalized. People will sometimes flippantly say, well, an organization like the federal government of the United States can't keep secrets. Well, I assure you that they can keep secrets. Absolutely they can. The example I use is the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was the project to build atomic weapons in World War II. Literally, tens of thousands of people, including my father and my grandfather, both worked on the Manhattan Project. Very few of those people had a clue what they were doing. Yes, indeed, the government can keep secrets. And this matter of the truth behind global warming is one of the most important secrets that they have. Now, Dr. Velikovsky wrote a number of books. Now, one of those books is titled Earth in Upheaval by Emmanuel Velikovsky. Now, what he's doing here is giving this is one page of one book. One page of one book. He's giving a very compact, highly condensed observation of what happens in a pole shift. Observations based on what he found going around the planet and finding the evidence. It paints a pretty bleak picture, and hopefully that won't be what we're in for. I can't stand here and prognosticate exactly what we're in for. I can tell you for a fact that the federal government has been spending hundreds of millions of your tax dollars getting ready for this since at least 1979, at least. All weather, and this is mentioned in the film, The Day After Tomorrow, all weather except for small areas, and we talk about man-made weather, but man-made manipulation of weather can affect a couple hundred square miles for a relatively short period of time. That's what man-made weather can do. But otherwise, all weather on this planet is a consequence of energy coming at us from our sun. In the film The Day After Tomorrow, there was an actor acting as a NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, acting as a NOAA scientist, and he makes this statement. The only place energy like this can come from, and at this level, is our sun. And that's a true, scientifically true statement. The sun is what's causing our weather to become so bizarre and so strange. Energy from our sun. And our sun is truly going ballistic and going bizarre, becoming bizarre. We've known for many decades that our sun goes through an 11-year cycle. 11 years of increasing solar activity to a high point, and 11 years of decreasing activity to a low point. When it got to the top of the 11-year cycle about 5 years ago, it didn't peak, it kept getting higher and higher to the point where all the instrumentation that they had set up to measure solar activity had to be recalibrated. They couldn't even measure it. They had to mathematically extrapolate to get the answers they were looking for what our sun was doing. And right now, in March of 2008, our sun is doing some very bizarre and very strange things, which is causing our weather to be very bizarre and do very strange things all over the earth. And it's happening right in front of our faces.
Ice just flew through the roof.
The two men believe the ice ball must have weighed at least 25 pounds before it flew through their roof and shattered into pieces.
to a tennis ball destroyed just about everything it fell on this morning here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In Arlington, Texas, the violent storm paralyzed the morning commute. Dallas backyards were covered in a sheet of white. The Fort Worth Zoo said the hail killed a number of exotic birds, including 5 flamingos.
about 3 years ago, I started looking at something that had been brought to my attention by several people, and it was basically the fact that there was huge, not millions of dollars, but billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars with a T disappearing out of the federal budgets. So we're talking much more money than I was used to chasing. We used to chase in these variety of corrupted operations. You chase a million or 10 or even $20 million trying to track that down. When they would, it would show up, let's say, disappeared out of a budget. But a couple of years ago, a fellow named Donald Rumsfeld, who was in charge at that time at the Defense Department, he came forward during a congressional inquiry, and he said that $2.3 trillion had vanished from the Defense Department budgets over a period of a few years.
Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T.
Now, the amount we're talking about now, by the way, 2.3 trillion is the equivalent to writing a check to every man, woman, and child in the United States of America for about $5,000. That's how much 2.3 trillion is. And Donald Rumsfeld, very calmly sat before the Congress and said that that money was missing. They didn't quite know where it was, coming out of defense budgets. Well, the senators and the congressmen, of course, were set back on that. You know, I mean, they're, like I say, they're used to stealing a few million here and there. But when you start talking that kind of money, that's pretty serious.
Because this is what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Every so often, Rumsfeld comes out and goes, I don't know where. I don't know when. But something awful is going to happen. Thank you. That's all for today. No further questions.
Now, what happened, coincidentally, and it is not coincidental, but what they claim to be a coincidence, that was about 1 day or 2 days before the 9/11 terrorist activity in New York and in the Pentagon. So when 9/11 took place, a day or so after Donald Rumsfeld admitted that they had lost $2 trillion, obviously we never heard the story again. It just disappeared into the smoke of the Twin Towers building in New York City. So the announcement was rather well timed because it just vanished. So at that point in time, now this is a couple of years ago, it really red flagged for me. I thought, wait a minute, something really is rotten in Denmark. We have all this money disappearing from standard legitimate funding out of Washington, just vanishing. And then we have the gold at Fort Knox is gone. I mean, it's gone. If it was there, they would show it to the appropriate people, and they're just not doing that. You know, when you're talking about trillions of dollars vanishing, and then you look at the rest of the scene, for example, changes that had taken place for 20 years with the space program being very, very different from what it originally was, and the expansion of what they called continuity of government within the United States, and the fact that they were arming the police departments with military weapons all over the United States, it started to really bother me. It was a matter of what is going on? What is it that would cause these guys, who usually steal what they want to, cover it up, and build them a new home in Tahiti or something for vacations and get away with it? But now they've changed direction. Then I remembered in the 90s, I had several people contact me, and they said, Bob, I have films of the construction of underground facilities all over the United States.
They're doing it now. They're going underground. It's like a ship. The ship is sinking. They're like rats. They're going to be like the rats are getting. They're going to jump ship. They're going to go out to the Ozarks.
You're telling me the Ozarks? The Ozarks. That big region smack in the center of the United States. Parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, and Oklahoma.
The Ozarks.
Where hillbillies live.
That's where they can be safest.
Well, they're pointing you in the right direction. We've seen incredible movements into that area because they believe it's one of the safest areas in North America during a disaster. They know something's coming, and we need to find out, are they getting ready for World War III? That's what must be looked into, Governor.
But progressively, I realized that the only thing, and once I learned all the information that has been put together on Nibiru and its previous passing, and the biblical scriptures about it, once I had learned that and put it together with everything else, there is nothing else on the face of the earth that would cause the major governments of the world to dig survivable space under the ground and into the sides of the mountains to hide themselves away. There's nothing else that fits it, period. They have taken over, we have taken, in the United States, we have taken over what was NORAD's facilities in Cheyenne Mountain. There are no longer equipment in there for checking and tracking missiles and weapons of that sort. That's what it was originally built for. It has been taken over. It is one of the new hideouts for the elite to run into the mountains when Nibiru passes close. It's one of the 100 and some that we have in America. The Chinese have thousands, and I have pictures and films of this. The Chinese actually have facilities so large under the mountains, into the mountains, and the sides of hills that they have stored entire fleets of airplanes and battleships. Now,
a sprawling multi-million square foot bunker. Tailor-made protection from an Armageddon.
Is he going in? Yep. Sure he's gonna be cool with me just riding up on his ass and they're gonna rat us out?
Tyrell moves closer and closer to the entrance. At any moment, the team can be stopped by armed security guards.
I say we keep moving. Tyrell waits for his moment and drives inside. I make sure we've got cameras rolling. This place isn't only the largest underground facility in the area. They say it's the largest in the world. Look at this. They got room for 2 lanes of 18-wheelers. The road literally goes on for miles. Look, there, it's branching off again. Who knows where that leads? Maybe even to the Huff House.
Do you think they're watching us right now?
Yeah.
And this thing's hooked up to railroad, too.
This facility covers 50 million square feet, all underground, all climate controlled. They got warehouses for food, data, all sorts of things. Offices, manufacturing, even underground farming, and stockpiles of crude oil. Oh yeah, there's plenty of space to live in. You can fit thousands of people here. if you want to save that many.
Well, you could definitely hide out from the world above for stuff like this, no doubt about it.
I never knew places like this existed in the world. I mean, yeah, this scale. You can store anything now.
This is huge. This is an underground city. And there are dozens of these across the region. This is starting to look a lot like conspiracy fact.
That definitely answers the question of why here.
Yep.
Because you don't have that type of ground and rock work generally anywhere else in the country.
We head back into daylight. And what do you know? Just across the way, railroad tracks. And parking lots full of buses and green energy vehicles. It's like they got door-to-door transportation for the chosen few. When it's time to move inside and weld those doors shut.
Is that a coincidence? Just happens to be there.
I don't necessarily think it'd be a good place to live, but it would be a good place to survive.
And that came to me from several people. Some of them were truck drivers who told me fantastic stories about having an 18-wheeler, 40-foot truck filled with foodstuffs being delivered into a government facility, and they would follow the map where they were supposed to go, and there was nothing out there. Let's say it was outside of Texas in the desert area, and they would go, and the side of the mountain would open up, and they would drive down inside of a mountain, and it would close behind them. Now, those are fantastic stories, but to me, back in the 90s, they were just that. To myself, that was almost an outrageous kind of a story. They would tell me about going into an underground facility in Tennessee and driving for 600 miles under the ground. Those things were a little mind-boggling and pretty fanciful type of a report for me. So I kind of put it on the back shelf. These people sent me pictures, and they sent me what were VHS videos at that time, but I didn't know what to make of them. It didn't mean anything, so I sort of put it on the side burner, so to speak, the back burner. But again, now this is about 3 years ago, I started putting all of the dots connected all of the dots. Now, and get back to where I was in 1983, apparently it was discovered sufficiently that scientific people at a very high level came into President Reagan and George Bush, the vice president, and said, we got a problem. It looks like now we found Planet X that's been talked about, like you mentioned earlier at the beginning. It's been talked about at least and written about, of course, going way back, but been in modern times, in 1960 and 50, there was writings about it in Life magazine and Reader's Digest and Lookton magazine, all the major media of that time in the 50s and the 60s. But apparently around 83, Ronald Reagan and his people were told that this is on its way back in and that it had been discovered, and now what are we going to do? All right? So at that point, it changed everything in Washington. And what you had now was this handful of large numbers of, I'm going to refer to them all as, excuse me, criminal, corrupted persons out of government, and they decided that what we have to do, obviously, is if this thing's coming back, we've got to expand underground facilities that are going to hold enough people so that our families and our immediate, most important, wealthy people of the United States are going to have a place to hide. They called it continuity of government, and they built 103 of these underground facilities underground in the United States. When I started investigating, I ended up being able to get plenty of information on them, including most of the locations. Additionally, we have live footage and photographs of the underground facilities. Again, not all of them. Most of them, of course, are secret to above top secret in their classification. I also started looking into it to find out what the status was on other foreign nations, because something of this sort, coming back, a biblical event that will devastate the globe, obviously has to be known also to the highest levels of other governments. What I found out is that Russia in 2010 put out a mandate that by 2015 that they would have 5,000 underground facilities prepared for as many people as they could in Russia. I found out they had one large facility. Actually, they have several large, but one of them's big enough to hold as many as 30,000 or 40,000 people underground. I discovered that the European major nations have been also building underground facilities. And then I also discovered, which anybody can look up because it is part of public information in general, you can look up what's called the Seed Vault of Norway or Denmark. They have built a giant international cooperative seed vault, maintains billions of seeds in the to be hidden away. It's underground in the side of a mountain. You can look it up on a computer. Just put International Seed Vault, and you can find it yourself on the computer. This is a storage facility maintaining all of the necessary seeds to reseed the globe, the entire face of the earth, or as much as they want or can, after the complete devastation similar to the original floods of Noah, which is what Nibiru, Planet X, will potentially bring upon the globe when it comes close to the earth. Now, here's something else that's very important. This is where the politics fits into this thing. The people that are keeping this secret from us, all right? A lot of people say, when will they tell us this is coming? They will never formally announce that this is coming in, all right? They are going to have, this is from the point of view of the bad guys, all right? The guys that have the tickets to go underground in the underground facilities and bring their families with them, all right? Those guys are going to have martial law declared in the United States a few months before 100,000 astronomers start seeing this thing appearing on the horizon, coming in as a new star. So, what are we talking about? If the timeline is being seen first in December and January, they will have to have some form of martial law a few months before that in the United States. So they will have complete control over the general public when it starts to become a riot on the surface of the earth. If the leaders of any of the major nations came out and told the world that this thing is going to be coming in 5 months or 2 months or 6 months, that this thing was going to be coming by, it would be the end of all things. The financing would be, the entire globe would go into riots. So it's not going to be announced. They will never tell us. Now, the next question is, how would they get away with declaring martial law? Because they have to have the general public to go along with it. They can't just do this. They have to have the public believing that it's a good idea for martial law. All right? So it will be one of three things. It'll either be some major terroristic acts, like 9/11 type thing, chemical, biological, or something like that, across the country in several places. If they announce that it looks like Russia is going to have a direct confrontation of World War III for some reason or another, and or Red China, that will be good enough for martial law. And the third one of possibility is obviously an outbreak of an uncontrollable disease like Ebola or something like that, getting large enough that it would be a believable reason for martial law. One of those three is going to constitute, and again, the best sign for people to understand when this thing might be coming around is when you see that martial law genuinely starting to take place. So then that's going to be the only thing that the average American public is going to be able to understand. And again, it could be even the solar flares. The solar flares that they were talking about, the head of the CIA, James Woolsey, the solar flares that he and Janet Napolitano was talking about, again, all of these will be part and parcel to the passing of Nibiru whenever that takes place. And unfortunately, it looks like it may be within 3 years. And again, our sign that's going to be a realistic signature is going to be when they pull the need for martial law in America.
They are fully anticipating a catastrophic celestial impact. That's the terminology they used when they were cutting the deal with the Russians to bring assistance over here when needed for FEMA, for the federal emergency. They are anticipating a celestial impact.
And instead of trusting in God and realizing, hey, God predicted this, they're going to blaspheme God. So the key is don't wait till that happens. In this age of grace, make your decision to trust in the Messiah. Only He can save you from all these catastrophes and ultimately eternal damnation in hell. He's our Savior. Amen? Praise God.
Because from chapter 6 of Revelation to chapter 19, you see all these judgments being released on the earth, and that is a part of the day of God's wrath, the day of God's vengeance, or the day of the Lord.
You hear that thunder roll, can't wait to quit spread. This song should come and goes. Who wrote the race path? Who had a love with those? This ain't the crash, relax. And when that trumpet blows, when that trumpet blows, yeah, when that trumpet blows, when that trumpet blows, yeah, when that trumpet blows, when that trumpet blows, yeah, when that trumpet blows. This ain't the crash, relax. Yeah, when that trumpet blows.
And one of the interesting things to contemplate here is the ancient cultures, as we read, the ancient pagan cultures, were terrified of the planet Mars. Why were these ancient cultures, who had less, sophistication than we have, less interest in space, and we think of mass.
Why were they obsessed by it?
They were obsessed. They, in fact, really terrified. They had priesthoods. They had whole rites that were organized. And one of the reasons we discover is apparently, there's evidence that the planet Mars interfered in their lives on a periodic basis, so much so as to destroy cities and so forth.
Thunder all through the night. Promise to see Yahshua in the morning light. Take my hand.